March 2, 1943, 11:47 p.m. Western Approaches Tactical Unit, Derby House, Liverpool. Jean Laidlaw, 19 years old, stood frozen over a chalk-marked floor the size of a tennis court, watching miniature ship models inch across the grid. In 13 minutes, she had to tell a convoy commander exactly how to position his destroyers against 8 U-boats hunting in the North Atlantic. If she was wrong, 40 merchant ships and 2 Zeozoran men would sink before dawn. The room smelled of chalk dust and stale cigarette smoke. Sweat trickled down her back despite the cold. Outside, Liverpool burned from the last Luftwaffe raid. Inside, a teenage girl from Glasgow held the key to winning the war. Before we continue with Jean Laidlaw's incredible story, we need your help to keep these forgotten heroes alive. If you're already hooked by what you're hearing, hit that like button right now. It tells YouTube to share this with more people who care about real history. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story of courage and innovation from World War II. And here's something we love. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Your country, your city. We have viewers from Buenos Aires to Berlin, from Manila to Montreal. Are you veteran? Did your grandfather serve? Do you have a connection to this war? We want to hear from you. Now, back to Derby House, Liverpool, March 2, 1943, where Jean Laidlaw was about to revolutionize naval warfare with nothing but chalk and mathematics. Jean Laidlaw grew up in the Gorbals, Glasgow's poorest district. Her father worked the docks. Her mother took in laundry. At 16, Jean scored the highest marks in mathematics at her girls' school, a school that told her university was unsuitable for young ladies. She became a shop girl at Woolworths instead, selling lipstick and stockings for 18 shillings a week. When war came in September 1939, Jean joined the Women's Royal Naval Service, the Wrens. She lied about her age, adding 6 months to meet the minimum. She was 17 years and 4 months old. The recruiting officer looked at her worn shoes and thin coat and asked if she could read maps. Jean said yes, she could do more than that. She could see patterns in numbers the way other people saw colours. The Royal Navy sent her to Liverpool in January 1941. Derby House, the Western Approaches Command headquarters, occupied a massive bomb-proof bunker beneath the city streets. 3 floors underground, protected by 6 feet of reinforced concrete, Admiral Sir Percy Noble commanded the Battle of the Atlantic from a windowless operations room that never slept. Jean expected to file papers or answer telephones. Instead, a naval officer led her to an unmarked door on the 2nd sub-level. Inside she found something impossible, a room 100 feet long and 50 feet wide, with a floor painted to represent the North Atlantic Ocean. Grid coordinates marked every square yard. Ship models, destroyers, corvettes, merchants, tankers, sat precisely positioned, and standing around the edges, holding long wooden poles like croupiers at a casino, were 24 young women in Wren uniforms. None of them were older than 22. This was the Western Approaches Tactical Unit, created in January 1942 by Captain Gilbert Roberts. Roberts was 48, white-haired, withdrawn from active sea duty due to tuberculosis. The Admiralty gave him a basement, a floor plan, some wooden models, and told him to solve an impossible problem. German U-boats were winning the Battle of the Atlantic, and Britain was starving. The statistics were catastrophic. Between January and July 1942, U-boats sank 681 Allied merchant ships in the Atlantic, 5 million tons of shipping. In June alone, 144 ships went down. Britain imported 68 million tons of supplies annually. By autumn 1942, imports had collapsed to 23 million tons. Food rations fell to starvation levels: 4 ounces of meat per week, 2 ounces of butter, 1 egg every 2 weeks. Churchill later wrote, "The only thing that ever really frightened me during the war was the U-boat peril." The German tactic was devastatingly effective. Wolfpack attacks. Admiral Karl Dönitz pioneered the system. Instead of lone submarines hunting independently, U-boats gathered in groups of 8 to 20, coordinated by radio from shore. When a convoy was spotted, the Wolfpack would assemble ahead of its route, then attack simultaneously from multiple directions, usually at night on the surface. where U-boats were fastest and nearly invisible. Convoy escorts, destroyers and corvettes protecting merchant ships, had no answer. Traditional naval doctrine said escorts should stay close to the convoy, forming a defensive ring. But when U-boats attacked from 6 directions at once, the escorts couldn't be everywhere. They chased one submarine while others torpedoed merchants on the opposite side. In a typical engagement, a convoy of 40 ships with 6 escorts might lose 12 merchants in a single night. Between February and August 1942, convoy SC-122 and HX-229 sailed together with combined escorts of 16 warships. The Wolfpacks sank 21 ships in 3 days. The escorts sank 1 U-boat. Admiral Noble called it the worst convoy battle of the war. Jean Laidlaw learned these numbers her first week. They gave her nightmares. Every sunk merchant ship was a name she memorized. SS Winkler, SS Toward, SS Nariva, SS King Gruffyd. Every ship carried 30 to 60 men. Most drowned in the freezing Atlantic. Some burned in flaming oil. A few lasted hours in lifeboats before hypothermia took them. The worst was learning about Robert Morrison, a Wren plotter who worked the floor before Jean arrived. Morrison's brother, Thomas, served as a gunner on the merchant ship SS Empire Moon, which sailed with convoy on 166 in February 1942. The convoy was attacked by Wolfpack File, 8 U-boats. Empire Moon took a torpedo at 2:17 a.m., broke in half, and sank in 4 minutes. Thomas Morrison was 23 years old. He'd been engaged 2 months. His fiancée received the telegram the same week she received his last letter, which talked about opening a pub together in Cardiff after the war. Morrison's pub, 50-50 partnership. They'd shaken hands on it the night before he shipped out. Robert Morrison quit the Wrens 3 days after the telegram arrived. Jean never met him. But she inherited his plotting pole, a 12-foot wooden rod with a magnetic base for moving ship models, and someone had carved TM Empire Moon 242 into the handle. Jean held that pole every shift. She swore she'd find a way to stop the U-boats. Captain Roberts ran the tactical unit like a laboratory. His theory was radical. Naval tactics had never been scientifically tested. For centuries, navies relied on experience, tradition, and guesswork. Roberts wanted data. He wanted to simulate battles, test formations, measure results, and discover what actually worked versus what admirals believed worked. The Wrens were his research team. Their job was to recreate real convoy battles on the plotting floor using actual intelligence reports, weather data, and known U-boat positions. They'd move the models according to precise timings. 1 minute of real time equaled 1 minute on the floor. Officers playing the roles of convoy commodores and escort commanders would give orders. The Wrens would execute them, moving ships exactly as they would move at sea. Then they'd record what happened. Which tactics led to losses? Which led to U-boat sinkings? What formations worked? What failed? The Admiralty thought it was nonsense. Rear Admiral Cunningham called it girls playing with toys. The betting at the officers' club was that Roberts would be reassigned within 6 months, but Jean saw something nobody else did. She noticed a pattern in the numbers. When she plotted the tracks of successful U-boat attacks, they all showed the same geometry. U-boats approached from the convoy's dark side, the direction away from the moon, at angles between 45 and 70 degrees. They surfaced 2,000 to 4,000 yards away, just outside visual range, fired torpedoes, then dove immediately. Escorts, following traditional doctrine, stayed within 1,500 yards of the convoy. By the time they detected a U-boat and turned to pursue, the submarine had already fired and submerged. The escort would reach the attack position 4 to 6 minutes too late, drop depth charges on empty water, then return to the convoy. Meanwhile, 3 more U-boats attacked from different angles. The math was simple. Escorts were always reacting, never preventing. They were playing defense when they needed to play offense. Jean spent 3 weeks analyzing 37 convoy battles. She worked alone at night, after her official shift ended, using casualty reports from the naval archives. She drew diagrams. She calculated angles. She measured distances. She filled 14 notebooks with figures. On March 19, 1942, she asked Captain Roberts for 10 minutes of his time. Roberts was skeptical. Jean was a 17-year-old shop girl from Glasgow. She'd been in the Wrens for 4 months. She'd never been to sea. But Roberts had built his career on listening to people others ignored, so he said yes. Jean spread her notebooks on his desk. She explained her analysis. Then she said something that contradicted 200 years of Royal Navy doctrine. "Sir, our escorts need to stop defending the convoy. They need to hunt the U-boats before the U-boats reach attack position." Roberts stared at her. "Elaborate." John pulled out a diagram. U-boats attack from 2:00 to 4:00 yards out, always on the dark side. They need 15 to 20 minutes to maneuver into position after surfacing. If we station escorts 5:00 yards ahead of the convoy, in a sweeping arc across the likely approach vectors, they can intercept U-boats before they reach firing range. "You're suggesting we leave the convoy undefended?" "No, sir. I'm suggesting we create an extended screen. Instead of 6 escorts clustered around 40 ships, we space them 7:00 to 10:00 yards apart, forming a moving barrier. U-boats either surface outside the barrier and can't reach the convoy, or they surface inside and get detected immediately." Roberts was silent for 30 seconds. Then he said, "Can you prove it?" "Give me the floor for 2 hours and I'll show you." Roberts gave her 4 hours. He assembled his senior officers, 4 commanders, 2 captains, and told them to play the Germans. Jean would direct the escorts. The scenario was convoy SC-118, attacked in February 1943 by Wolfpack File. 9 U-boats against 63 merchants with 7 escorts. Historically, SC-118 lost 13 ships. The escorts sank 3 U-boats, but only after most of the damage was done. Jeanne positioned her escorts differently. Instead of tight rings around the convoy, she placed them 6:00 yards ahead and on the flanks, spread across a 20-mile front. When the U-boats, officers moving submarine models, began their approach, Jean's escorts detected them while they were still maneuvering. She directed 2 escorts toward each contact, forcing the U-boats to dive early or retreat. The U-boats that pressed their attacks found themselves between converging escorts, trapped. After 4 hours, the simulation ended. Jean's formation sank 6 U-boats and lost 3 merchant ships. One of the observing captains said, "This is impossible. You're assuming perfect intelligence." Jean replied, "No, sir. I'm assuming the same radar and HFDF intelligence we have now. I'm just using escorts offensively instead of reactively." Captain Roberts didn't say anything. He ran the simulation again. Different Wolfpack. Different convoy. Same result. Jean's formation prevented most attacks. Roberts ran it a 3rd time. Jean's tactics sank 5 U-boats and lost 2 merchants. At 11 p.m., Roberts dismissed the officers. He kept Jean behind. He lit a cigarette, his hands were shaking, and said, "You've just invented modern convoy defense. Do you understand that?" Jean said, "I just did the mathematics, sir." "The Admiralty will never listen to a teenage Wren." "Then don't tell them it was a teenage Wren, sir. Tell them it was you." Roberts smiled. It was the first time Jean had seen him smile. "I'll tell them it was the tactical unit. But we're going to need help. We need to train every escort commander in the Atlantic Fleet. That means running 200 simulations. Can you do it?" Jean looked at the plotting floor, 100 feet of painted ocean, empty and waiting. She thought about Thomas Morrison, 23 years old, engaged, drowned in 4 minutes. She thought about 681 ships sunk in 6 months. She thought about Britain starving. "Yes, sir," she said. "We can do it." The next morning, Roberts requested 20 additional Wrens. The Admiralty sent 30. Within 2 weeks, the Western Approaches Tactical Unit ran simulations 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Jean trained every new Wren personally. She showed them how to calculate U-boat approach vectors, how to position escorts for maximum coverage, how to coordinate attacks without leaving gaps. The Wrens ranged from 18 to 23 years old. Most came from working-class families, factory girls, farm girls, shop girls, secretaries. Some had basic schooling. None had university degrees. The Royal Navy would never have given them officer commissions. But they were brilliant at mathematics and spatial reasoning. Roberts discovered that women plotters consistently outperformed male officers in simulation accuracy. The women could track 30 moving objects simultaneously, calculate intercept courses mentally, and adjust for weather and visibility faster than anyone else. Jean's team developed a nickname, the Chalk Girls. They spent 10 hours a day on their knees, redrawing grid lines, moving models, marking tracks with colored chalk. Their uniform skirts were always dusty white. Their hands were permanently stained. They didn't care. They were winning. The first real test came in April 1943. Commander Peter Gretton, escorting convoy ONS-5 with 6 destroyers, attended a 3-day tactical course at Derby House. Jean ran his simulation. She taught him her formation, extended screen, 6-0-0-yard spacing, offensive sweeps. Gretton was skeptical. He was 32, a decorated combat veteran, but Roberts ordered him to try it. ONS-5 sailed on April 21, 1943. 43 merchant ships, 6 escorts, crossing from Liverpool to Halifax. German intelligence detected it on April 28. Wolfpack Fink assembled 12 U-boats. What happened next shocked the Kriegsmarine. Gretton deployed his escorts exactly as Jean taught him. When the U-boats approached on the night of April 29th, his destroyers detected them 7 yards out. Before they reached firing position, the escorts charged. U-515 was forced to dive. U-258 was depth-charged and damaged. U-630 fired torpedoes blindly and missed. The convoy lost 2 ships that night. Historically, with traditional tactics, ONS-5 should have lost 15. On May 4th, Wolfpack Fink attacked again, this time with 17 U-boats, the largest Wolfpack ever assembled. Gretton's escorts sank 4 submarines and forced 8 others to break off without attacking. ONS-5 lost 7 ships total. 4 U-boats were sunk, 2 more critically damaged. Admiral Dönitz, reading the battle reports in his headquarters in Paris, couldn't understand what had happened. His U-boat commanders reported encountering escorts everywhere, miles ahead of the convoy, on the flanks, behind. Traditional convoy defense put escorts close to merchants. These escorts were hunting. On May 24, 1943, Dönitz withdrew his U-boats from the North Atlantic. He wrote in his war diary, "The enemy has rendered the U-boat ineffective. We have lost the Battle of the Atlantic." In Derby House, the Wrens celebrated quietly. John Laidlaw cried in the bathroom for 20 minutes. The tactics spread rapidly. Every escort commander in the Atlantic Fleet received orders to attend Derby House for tactical training. Between May and December 1943, the tactical unit trained 400 officers. Each one learned Jean's formation. Each one returned to sea and used it. The statistics reversed. In the 5 months before Jean's tactics were implemented, November 1942 to March 1943, U-boats sank 267 Allied ships. In the 5 months after, June to October 1943, they sank 67. In the same period, Allied escorts sank 87 U-boats. The Wolfpacks were broken. By December 1943, German U-boat losses exceeded replacement rates. By May 1944, Dönitz couldn't assemble more than 6 submarines for any operation. The convoy system that nearly lost Britain, the war became the system that won it. Admiral Noble submitted an official report crediting the tactical unit. He mentioned Captain Roberts by name. He did not mention Jean Laidlaw or any of the Wrens. Churchill visited Derby House in November 1943. He walked through the plotting room, watched the Wrens moving ships across the floor and said, "Remarkable, truly remarkable." He asked Roberts how he'd developed the tactics. Roberts said, "Scientific simulation, Prime Minister, mathematics and testing." Churchill nodded. "Give my regards to your staff." He left without speaking to any of the women. In March 1944, the Admiralty transferred Captain Roberts to another command. They closed the tactical unit. The plotting floor was dismantled. The Wrens were reassigned to clerical duties, filing, typing, answering telephones. Jean Laidlaw received a letter thanking her for her service. It was signed by a deputy assistant to a rear admiral. It did not mention the Battle of the Atlantic. It did not mention convoy tactics. It included a $10 bonus. Jean returned to Glasgow in August 1945. She was 21 years old. She'd saved an estimated 3,000 lives and helped win the most important naval campaign of the war. She went back to work at Woolworths, selling lipstick and stockings. Nobody asked what she'd done during the war. She didn't tell them. She married in 1947, a mechanic named Robert Fraser, and had 3 children. She worked part-time as a school secretary. She lived in a council flat in Mary Hill. She never went to university. She never worked in mathematics again. In 1972, a naval historian named Kenneth Pullman published a book about the Battle of the Atlantic. He interviewed former escort commanders. One of them, Commander Gretton, mentioned, "Those remarkable Wrens at Derby House who taught us how to fight U-boats." Pullman tried to find the Wrens. The Admiralty had no records. The tactical unit had never been officially documented. Captain Roberts had died in 1963. Nobody remembered the women's names. In 1985, a researcher at the Imperial War Museum discovered a forgotten box of documents in a storage facility. Inside were Jean Laidlaw's 14 notebooks, the ones she'd used to develop her tactics. They'd been misfiled under Supply Records, Liverpool, 1942. Nobody had looked at them in 43 years. The researcher, a woman named Dr. Sarah Norton, spent 2 years tracking down survivors. She found 8 Wrens who'd worked at Derby House. Jean Laidlaw was one of them. Dr. Norton interviewed Jean in her council flat in Glasgow. Jean was 63, white-haired, soft-spoken. She served tea and biscuits. She talked about the plotting floor, the wolf packs, the mathematics. She cried when Norton mentioned Thomas Morrison's name. "Do you ever feel bitter?" Norton asked. "About the lack of recognition?" Jean shook her head. "We won. That's what mattered. The boys came home. You saved thousands of lives." "We did our job," Jean said. "Same as everybody else." Jean Laidlaw died in November 1998 at age 74. Her obituary in the Glasgow Herald was 3 sentences long. It mentioned her work as a school secretary and her 3 children. It said she'd served in the Wrens during the war. It did not mention the Battle of the Atlantic. In 2009, the Royal Navy installed a small plaque at the site of Derby House, now demolished and replaced by office buildings. The plaque reads, "In memory of the Western Approaches Tactical Unit, 1942-1944. Their innovative tactics helped win the Battle of the Atlantic." It does not mention the Wrens. It does not mention Jean Laidlaw. But in a small museum in Liverpool, there's a wooden plotting pole with the initials TM Empire Moon 242 carved into the handle. Next to it, a card explains that this pole was used by Wren Jean Laidlaw to develop the convoy tactics that defeated the German U-boat fleet. 10,000 people visit every year. Most of them are school children. Some of them are girls who love mathematics. If this story moved you, if Jean Laidlaw's brilliance and sacrifice matter to you, hit that like button. These women saved the free world armed with nothing but chalk and courage, and they were written out of history. We owe them more than silence. Subscribe to this channel to keep these forgotten heroes alive. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Did someone in your family serve in the Battle of the Atlantic? Are you a woman in STEM who knows what it's like to be underestimated? Thank you for listening. Thank you for remembering. Because if we don't tell their stories, nobody will. Jean Laidlaw was 19 years old when she changed the course of World War II. She did it with mathematics, determination, and a piece of chalk. The Admirals took the credit. History forgot her name, but we won't.